Hello there, White Sox fans, and hope everybody's enjoying spring training. It is definitely really fun to see actual baseball again, something that seemed so far away when we were in the middle of that lockout. Last time I had a lot of fun, by the way. About a week and a half ago, we did a live stream, and it was a lot of fun talking with anybody that was able to watch it live, and a number of you watched it after the fact and still commented and whatnot, and that's a blast too. I always love interacting with you, and I think I'm going to do that a bit more often. I didn't really do that much at all last year. I was just the trade deadline and then the lockout, countdown to the lockout. I did some live streams, but I'm going to do that more this coming year. Really, it's a fun way to be able to just live interact with you and talk about what we love, White Sox baseball. During that live stream, somebody asked who in the American League Central I was most afraid of. Like, who's going to play the White Sox the toughest this year? And I really do think the White Sox have a pretty straight path, as long as nothing horrendous happens. A pretty clear path to the playoffs again this year. But the team that scares me the most is the Tigers. They are a great up-and-coming team. Of course, when that question was asked and answered, that was before a middle infielder by the name of Carlos Correa joined the Minnesota Twins, which was such a strange move. I did not see that one coming at all. Nobody really saw that one coming. And he's going to be a difference maker. He is an exceptional player, whether you like him or not, and I'm not a big fan. He's a talented guy. There's no doubting that. He's as much as he gets big accolades for his work with the bat, he's an exceptional fielder, as we saw firsthand as the White Sox had to face Houston in the playoffs, and just anything anywhere remotely near him was an out. He definitely played the White Sox really hard, and we're going to see him a lot in Minnesota this year, and that is going to be a challenge. However, first off, a lot of us were saying that if only the White Sox got challenged more during the season, maybe that would have gotten them more ready for the playoffs. So better competition within the division is a good thing for the long-term prospects for this team. It's really nice to be able to sleepwalk to 90 wins and walk into the playoffs, but then to get eliminated in the first round 2 seasons in a row, not so fun. So an improved Tigers team and Carlos Correa coming to Minnesota hopefully will help the White Sox become more conditioned and ready to go deeper into October. That said, again, I was so surprised at the Correa signing, largely because the Twins last year traded away their staff ace, Jose Barrios, who was under contract for more than he wasn't just a rental at that point. So when that trade happened, that signaled to me that Minnesota is not going to compete in 2021. They're probably not going to compete in 2022. So they aren't going to be somebody that the White Sox have to worry about, which obviously that has turned because they also picked up Sonny Gray. There has been some big additions in Minnesota. So one of the questions I had in mind is that yes, Minnesota picked up Carlos Correa, but in the days leading up to it, they traded away Josh Donaldson. Last year, again, like I said, Jose Barrios and Nelson Cruz is no longer on the team. A lot of pieces were taken away. So does the addition of Carlos Correa really just fill in the hole left behind all those other subtractions? On that note, I thought, well, it might be fun to look at the entire American League Central. So I want to take a look at all additions and subtractions of every American League Central team since July of last year up to right now, today, March 26th. As I'm recording this, and by measure of WAR, what teams have added on the most WAR players or lost the most WAR. I just shot this whole video and realized that I didn't take the time to explain what WAR is. I'm sure most of you know, but WAR stands for wins above replacement. If a player is completely an average Major League Baseball player, their WAR for the season would be 0.0. So not great, but it's not a negative, because a negative means you were carrying someone on your team that ended up not being as good as the average expected Major League player. Also, there's not one standardized version. Baseball Reference has their own calculations for coming up with WAR, while Fangraphs has their own. I went with Baseball Reference. Whether you're a pitcher, whether you're a hitter, they're also looking at your fielding abilities. It's kind of one neat number that gives you a somewhat full picture of how valuable a player is. For comparison's sake, some guys at the very top of this list, Trey Turner, Vlad Jr., Bryce Harper, Marcus Semien, Juan Soto, they are all over 6.5 WAR. So they alone contributed, in essence, more than 6 wins to their team's total for the year. For comparison's sake, some guys that are around being a league average player, somebody around 0 WAR. Now, they're not exactly at 0, but Carlos Santana for Kansas City, Jorge Soler, Hunter Dozier, Eric Hosmer, Kevin Newman from Pittsburgh. Now we'll jump back to the video already in progress. Now, this is not going to be a definitive, these teams have gotten better, these teams have gotten worse, because veteran players are going to decline. Younger players are going to take that next step forward. These are things that I'm not even going to try to account for. Personally, I hope Eloy Jimenez takes a huge leap forward. He only had 10 home runs last year in 60 games, so very limited time for him, but he was a very streaky player. Can Eloy limit those times where he is just off for a little bit, get out of those slumps faster? I think he can, but that's not going to be reflected in this at all because we can't predict the future. Also, I'm not factoring in things like players coming back from injury. As we talked about in the last video, a lot of White Sox players spent a lot of time on the injured list last year. That should make the White Sox better this year if they can stay healthy. We don't know if they will or not. Meanwhile, the Guardians, the first time I can actually call them the Guardians officially, Shane Bieber is back with them now. An amazing pitcher who lost a lot of time. We don't really know what he's going to have. We can't make that prediction. That's not what this is about at all. This isn't designed to be some sort of a proof of what the year is going to be. We let them play the games and find that out. But here, let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. We'll start with the Kansas City Royals, who, speaking of teams that play the White Sox hard, the Kansas City Royals consistently gave the White Sox a tough time last year, even though they were kind of never playing for anything. They were never in it. They were never expected to win, but they were always a really hard team for the White Sox to face. Okay, so when we were looking at the Royals, first we're going to talk about player personnel that they said goodbye to. Guys that were on the team last year that are not on the team this year. So what players did they say goodbye to sometime between July of last year and now? Well, that's Wade Davis. And his WAR on the year last year was just a negative 0.6. So he was actually worse than a league average pitcher. So by the fact that they lost him and they lost that negative 0.6 WAR, that's actually a benefit to them, as long as they can replace those innings with somebody that can get at least a 0 WAR. They also said goodbye to Jorge Soler, a guy who really slumped hard with Kansas City. After he was traded, he did well, but overall on the year, he was a negative 0.3. Kevin Gutierrez, negative 0.1. Same with Kyle Zimmer. Ryan McBroom was an exact replacement level player last year at 0. Now we get into the positive, the guys on the plus side of things, even just a little bit. Greg Holland is a positive 0.1 WAR. Hanser Alberto, 0.4. Irvin Santana, 0.5. Same with Richard Lovelady. Mike Minor was traded away. He was a positive 1 WAR player. And Alcides Escobar was a 1.6. So when you add up all the players that they lost, both the positives and the minuses, it comes out to a positive 3. So that's 3 player wins that Kansas City is going to lose based on just this alone. We haven't looked at players that they've picked up so far. Best case scenario, they would only have gotten rid of players that were negative WAR, and they would actually become a positive if you add up all of those negatives. I'm spending a lot of time explaining this so that we can go over it fast when we go over the rest of the teams. So as we look at this going forward, for a team to improve, they want this number to be in the negatives. Right now, for Kansas City, this is a +3. Players worth a total of 3 WAR are no longer on the team. Who have they picked up? They picked up Amir Garrett, which, first player that they've actually gained is a negative, but I think he's going to make a comeback. He's a potentially dominant reliever that just hasn't been able to get his control under him, but he's a younger player. I could see this guy taking the next step forward. So far, though, he's a -3. They did pick up Taylor Clark, kind of negligible. He's a positive 0.1, and they made kind of a surprising splash. One of the good stories, I would say, in the offseason is Zac Renke coming home. Last year, he was worth a positive 1.2 WAR, and that was it. They had a pretty quiet offseason. So all told, that is a gain of 1 game. When you combine those two, on the loss side, they lost 3 wins, and on the positive side, they gained 1 win. Now, we're not exactly predicting what their record is going to be, but as far as player WAR is concerned, we'll give it a score for the Royals general manager, and as far as personnel goes, the Royals are at a -2 WAR. Like I said, I'm going to go through the rest of these a lot faster than I went through the Royals. And at the end is where we will see which teams made the biggest gains. In the Royals case, it's going to be a loss. So the Royals will probably rank kind of low on our standings here, but they're not expected to compete this year. And this also isn't factoring in anybody that came in on a minor league deal, people that were already within their system that will be getting called up. Like I said, this is an imperfect system for predicting the year, but it is going to be interesting to see what moves on the baseball business side of things affect the team moving forward for this year. With the Guardians, they are starting off on the right foot, dropping C.J. Meja, who was worth a -1.2 WAR last year. Catcher Wilson Ramos, a -0.4. Kyle Nelson, -0.3. Rene Rivera and their backup catcher Roberto Perez, a -0.1. As you see, 2 catchers that were worth a combined negative 0.4 are going away. Roberto Perez is an interesting one. Yes, he was the backup last year, but he's just a few years removed from being a back-to-back Gold Glove winner. Although he was never great with the bat, WAR does factor in fielding. So he was mostly an above replacement level catcher. He's in his 30s now, but we can see that the catching position is a place of need for Cleveland. So far, just by looking at the losses removed, they're going to be about 2 games better right now, but wait, there's more losses. They had 2 replacement level players in Phil Maton and Ryan Lavernaway, a plus 0.1 for Harold Ramirez, and this is a place where we can see that this is not an exact science because Cesar Hernandez is going to count against both the White Sox and Cleveland to the tune of a 0.4 WAR. Because I'm not breaking it up on what they did for each team, I'm just saying what they are expected to do for a year going forward based on what they did last year. And in this case, technically it should hurt Cleveland more because Cesar Hernandez was really good with Cleveland and was so-so with the White Sox. Jordan Luplow was 0.6, Blake Parker a 0.9, and Eddie Rosario, who was just a salary dump. He was a 1.1 WAR player overall on the season, but Cleveland really traded him away just to save a few $1 million. They didn't really get anything for him. Players that the Guardians picked up: Sandy Leon, who was a negative 0.8 last year, so that's really hard. And Luke Maile was a positive 0.2. However, at the trade deadline last year, they made the best move of their last year, which was picking up Miles Straw for a couple of lower-level prospects. Houston had too many outfielders. Cleveland's been needing outfielders. That was a really, really great pickup for him that will probably pay some dividends moving forward because he's under team control for a while yet. So he was a positive 3.2 last year. It's kind of easy to forget how good of an offseason the Tigers had because most of their action came before the lockout happened. They lost Daniel Norris, a negative 0.7, Jose Urena, negative 0.6, Derek Holland, positive 0.1, Julio Teheran, a positive 0.2. I think he's still a free agent. I wouldn't mind the White Sox looking for an innings eater like him. And Willie Peralta, who was a positive 2 WAR guy. All of them were lost. They picked up Tucker Barnhart, I think an under the radar but positive pickup for them, a positive 0.2. Dustin Garneau, positive half WAR. Michael Pineda is a name we'll see again because he left Minnesota, came to Tigers, so that's going to count against Minnesota and help out Detroit. A positive 1.4. And it's one of those things, looking at a veteran, can we really expect Michael Pineda to be a positive 1.4 WAR next year? Probably not, but still, we're moving forward with this. One of the big pickups, Eduardo Rodriguez, somebody that I really wish the White Sox went after. He was a positive 1.8. They picked him up on a 5-year deal. And then Javi Baez. And this is where you can really see that defense matters when you're factoring in WAR. Javi Baez has been just dropping off a cliff when it comes to his offensive production, but he's still a really great defender. So he's worth a positive 4.5 WAR. That's a big one. That's, I think, the biggest number we've come across so far. Heading over now to Minnesota, we see that the Twins got immediately better just by getting rid of J.A. Happ, who is worth a negative 1.5 WAR. Alex Colomé, shout out to him. He ended the year pretty well, but overall he was worth a negative 0.7. He is in Colorado now. So we'll see how he does in that thin air. Also a negative 0.7 was El Tortuga. Not exactly Yermin Mercedes' best friend. Willens Astudillo was worth a negative 0.7. Hansel Robles and Ben Roorvelt was a negative 0.1 apiece. And Jan Romero was a replacement level player. They also lost some production. As we know, there's going to be some big names coming up in this one. Andrew Vasquez, 0.1. Michael Pineda, that 1.4. Andrelton Simmons, really excellent defender, who's now on the north side of Chicago, was a positive 1.5. Mitch Garver, 1.2. Nelson Cruz, of course, he was already traded away, but they aren't going to get any production at all from him this year. He was a positive 2.5 overall. And then Josh Donaldson and Jose Berrios, each worth a positive 3.2. I thought Jose was actually going to end up being worth more than that, but still, those are some fairly substantial numbers. They add up. Also, there's only 2 times in this video where we are going to talk about somebody that's going to be lost for the whole year due to injured list. And one of those is Kenta Maeda right now, who is hoping to come back in September, but it's not exactly a guarantee. And then when he does come back, at what strength is he going to be? We don't really know for sure. He was worth just 0.4 WAR last year, and that's partially because he was limited by time due to injury and also limited in his effectiveness, possibly also due to injury. But still, that's another 0.4 going against the Twins, what they're losing. What did they pick up? Well, first they picked up a couple of negative WAR players in Dylan Bundy, a negative 0.3, Jose Godoy, negative 0.1, picking up 0.3 WAR in each Joe Ryan and Jarrell Cotton, positive 0.6 and 0.7 in Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez. These players, I think, will end up doing better than this. A lot of people expect a ton from them, mostly because they are known names, because they're Yankees. Everybody knows Yankees players. I think leaving New York and the spotlight and pressure of New York might allow them to take that next level in their career. Hopefully they don't, as a White Sox fan, but I think that's a distinct possibility in Minnesota, especially with Gary Sanchez, where we've seen that he has the power. He has not had the consistency, though. Will he put it together in Minnesota? Time will tell. Sonny Gray was a great pickup for Minnesota. He's worth a positive 3.3 WAR at a time that the Twins are needing to replace innings from J.A. Happ, Michael Pineda. Even though Happ's innings weren't good, still, somebody's got to pitch those innings. And, of course, Kenta Maeda now. Sonny Gray and Dylan Bundy, just the two of them, probably won't be able to bridge that gap alone. But that Gray pickup was a really, really positive one for Minnesota. I'm sure Minnesota fans, just like White Sox fans, wish that there was just one more pitcher our GM picked up. And, of course, then we get to the big name in this whole video, and that is Carlos Correa, adding 7.2 wins alone. He alone is worth 7.2 wins last year. So are Gray and Correa alone enough to make up the difference between all those losses? We'll find out at the end of this video. And of course, we're not just looking around the league, we're looking at ourselves too. The White Sox, in early July of last year, they made an addition by subtraction by removing Adam Eaton from the team. He was worth a negative 0.6 WAR last year. Brian Goodwin right now is still a free agent. He might come back to the White Sox or somewhere as a depth piece. Unfortunately, the White Sox needed to rely on him a lot with so many outfield injuries last year. He ended up only being worth a negative 0.5 WAR. So Eaton and Goodwin alone leaving, it improved the team by over a win. Jake Lamb, a guy that I had high hopes for, but ended up just getting frustrated how frequently Tony La Russa used him, was worth a negative 0.3. A couple of arms in the bullpen that were worth an even 0 WAR. Zach Birdie and Mike Wright are gone. And here's where we start to feel some losses. Cesar Hernandez, as I mentioned before, was 0.4. Billy Hamilton right now is with the Seattle Mariners on a minor league deal. He ended up being an excellent depth pickup when the White Sox were having a tough time with injuries. He was worth a 0.4 WAR with us. Cody Hoyer was worth 0.5 WAR. And I know that he is not going to play this year, even for the Cubs, but still, he was worth 0.5 WAR last year, and that's an arm that we no longer have in our bullpen. Nick Madigal in his limited time was worth a 1.2 WAR. Ryan Tepera on the season overall was worth a 1.8 WAR. And the big name that we all know that we are going to be missing is Carlos Rodon, was worth 5 WAR even. 5 wins alone from one player. That might be the second biggest name on this list. Would have been worth more had he been able to stay healthy and get those innings in at the end of the year. But that's a big gap we're trying to close, trying to recover those 5 WAR. And here's the only other injured list personnel that we have to mention, which is Evan Marshall. Last year with the White Sox, he was only worth a negative 0.2 WAR. He's missing the entirety of this year due to Tommy John surgery, and hopefully he's able to come back and still be effective in 2023. He, just like Kenta Maeda, missed time and was ineffective when he was still on the active roster. I do want to mention Jimmy Cordero. He's currently with the Yankees, recently signed with the Yankees. He doesn't factor into this at all because he didn't pitch for the White Sox at all last year. He missed all of 2021 with Tommy John surgery. But just want to give him a shout out and hope he is able to recover and get his career back on track after that major injury. Who did the White Sox pick up? Well, it starts out bad for us, as it does with just about everybody, where our first player that we picked up is actually worth a negative. That is Vince Velasquez, a negative 0.4. I have high hopes for him. But it's just hopes. My fingers are crossed. Can't bank on too much. Hopefully he can pitch some effective innings somewhere. Long relief, ideally. But we shall see. Joe Kelly is an exciting pickup, but he was only worth 0.7 WAR last year, largely due to some injuries himself. And I cannot wait for Joe Kelly and Carlos Correa to face off over and over again this year. Our big pickup in the bullpen during the offseason was Kendall Graveman, worth a 2.1, and I really saw him as a replacement for Evan Marshall. And so if we can literally replace that negative 0.2 from Evan Marshall with a positive 2.1 from Kendall Graveman, that's a very, very positive step right there. Josh Harrison, our new second baseman, was worth 2.1 last year, and that's really better than I thought it was going to be. I was hoping that he was going to be worth 1. And here's maybe the most controversial number that you'll see on this list. A pickup from last year at the trade deadline, Craig Kimbrell on the season overall was worth a positive 2.5 WAR. Can we expect that from him this year? No, I'll just say no. I have hope, my fingers are crossed, that he'll still be worth a positive number. It's been a rough stretch so far in his White Sox tenure. But now let's crunch all these numbers, all the negatives against the positives, and see what the net result is for all the teams in the American League Central. Off camera, I have added up individually all the losses and the gains from each team, and now I'm going to put them together, and we're going to see where we end up, where the rankings are. And we know from the very beginning that the Royals are a -2 games on this one. Among teams within the division, and just looking at the players they lost, I thought maybe one team would be, at least one team would have a net negative, so that they would have ultimately benefited just from the players that they got rid of, but that wasn't true anywhere. Both the Guardians and the Tigers were probably the best at that, at shedding players that had negative WAR. So overall, among players they lost 1 WAR, but gained 2.6, which is a net of just a 1.6 improvement. Same with Detroit, a positive 1 WAR lost among players that they lost. And they made up for that nicely by gaining 8.4, which is a net of 7.4. The Twins went big in every possible way. First, among players that they lost since July 1st of last year, that is 11.5 wins that went out the door, of course, headlined by Donaldson, Berrios, and Cruz. A total of 11.5 wins. And of course, then they went big, picking up Sonny Gray, Carlos Correa, Ursula Sanchez, for a gain back of 12 wins. So they still ended up on the positive side, but just barely, just 0.5 wins better. So they'll be starting out with a roster this year that looks just 1/2 game better than the roster they started out with last year. It's really interesting just looking at it from a player personnel standpoint, which really I feel is looking at the general manager's plan. Right now, the Twins 1/2 game better than last year's team when just looking at this one aspect of the roster. And of course, that brings us to the White Sox. And all is not great here. So we knew that losing Carlos Rodon was going to be a big deal. That was 5 wins right there. Among players that were subtracted, Ryan Tepera is a loss. And the only losses for benefit, Adam Eaton, Brian Goodwin. Fortunately, I guess, we didn't have a lot of negative WAR players on our team to not be able to bring back. We lost 7.7 wins based on players that are not with the team this year, that was with the team last year. And to make up for it, we got almost all the way back. And that is only if you really do accept Craig Kimbrell as a 2.5 WAR player, which of course most of us don't. This still has the White Sox at a negative 0.7 win. So that is how it shapes up. The Tigers coming away in the lead right here, and it's not even close. Amazingly, the Guardians, who didn't do very much, they still ended up 1.6, and that is largely just because they didn't bring back a lot of bad players. And of course, the Twins up 0.5 game, the White Sox is down 0.7 games, and then the Royals down 2 solid games. This is not exactly how the season is going to play out. I just thought this would be an interesting way, a war of wars, if you will.